sorry. Now you have 5 minutes. The gentlewoman from California, Ms. Lee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I too associate myself with your remarks earlier about the American Rescue Plan. I just want to remind all of our colleagues that this pandemic has taken over 1 million lives. I shudder to think what would have happened had we not passed the American Rescue Plan. And it has saved lives and it's saved livelihoods. And so we can't forget that in terms of the investments that were made. Let me thank our director for being here. And let me just go right into our questions because I think I'm going to ask about the Department of Defense. It's quite frankly the only cabinet agency not to pass an audit. And I have legislation that would require DoD to pass an audit or face automatic spending cuts. So how does DoD's failure to pass an audit complicate budget planning? From an auditing point of view, how much Pentagon spending is unaccounted for? Why should this Congress continue to add more and more money to the defense top line in the meantime if it can't be audited, if there's no accountability? And what sort of forcing mechanism should we be considering in Congress to get DoD to pass an audit? And this has been supported by my bill, by my colleagues on the other side of the House. What can we do? It's long overdue. And you also, finally, the report, how DoD might save $1 trillion over the next 10 years, it concluded that we can better defend our country by getting more for less money. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I'd be glad to talk about this. And it's the problems you're pointing to are a challenge for us as well, that we aim for our baseline that we provided yesterday to inform policymakers, to inform you and your colleagues. And when the information that we get from the executive branch is, I guess imperfect is the nice way of putting it, that means our baseline isn't as informative as it should be. And so absolutely, we are there, and better information from DoD and from others would help us and help us serve the Congress with our mission. In terms of the defense budget going forward, of course, CBO doesn't provide policy recommendations, but we have done a number of studies that will help policymakers look at different choices for the defense. We recently put out a tool, it's actually online, on different force structures that your staff could go through and say, okay, if we change the services in different ways, what would be the fiscal implications of that? And of course, we're not saying do this or do that, but you can see that basically how much money is saved by different choices on the national security side.
Well, let me ask you though, it has failed to pass an audit. What do we do? If a business fails to pass an audit, it gets dinged. There are penalties. Agencies have penalties. People have penalties. Why does the Defense Department get away with unaccounted spending? It boggles my mind. There's no accountability there. So I know you can't suggest policies, but tell me how inappropriate it is for our budgeting process to go forward without a clear picture. I mean, we need to know what's, the hand needs to be shown in terms of what you're dealing with. Otherwise, it's not a good mechanism for us to make forecasts or for us to make decisions on our spending if we let agencies just run amok with the resources that we appropriate.
Right, and of course, most of the national security spending is appropriations. And so we support the appropriations committees in both the House and the Senate as they take up the FY23 appropriations. And you're absolutely right that imperfect information means that we're not able to support them in the way that we need to.
So how do you audit? Okay, so what do you do? What would your suggestions be on any agency that is not auditable?
No, it's a difficult question for us because we provide information to the budget committees to enforce the budget rules, and it's really more GAO that does the auditing, and of course has very substantial expertise in auditing. So really, they're the one, and they would put forward policy recommendations. So they're the ones who would, go out and say, here's how the situation can be improved.
Well, with your new, CBO baseline, it is a real shame and disgrace that you all aren't working together, and you're not suggesting it impairs your ability to be accurate in forecasting if they don't insist on an audit. But in terms of the baseline dealing with inflation, how does the Pentagon's budget assumptions fit in to that in terms of CBO's baseline?
Okay.
Audit.
No, absolutely. And essentially, it goes both ways. That the fiscal spending has an impact on inflation, and of course, the decline in in spending from last year to this year will alleviate some of the inflationary pressures going forward. But of course, it's in the other direction as well. That inflation affects military spending. The military is as I understand it, the largest purchaser of jet fuel, for example. So energy costs will affect affect them as well. So it definitely, there's an impact on inflation, between inflation and national security spending, that goes in both directions.
Gentlewoman's time has expired, and now you'll